In a gritty, crime-ridden city, rumors of a powerful underground gang spread like wildfire. This gang wasn't just notorious for extortion. They were feared for the terrifying and brutal message they sent to anyone who dared to resist. Demands would come quietly at first, through whispers or shadowy figures telling shopkeepers that a sum of money had to be paid. If they refused or even hesitated, a chilling package would arrive at their doorstep, a parcel with the severed head of one of their loved ones. The gang's control was total. They didn't operate like typical criminals. They had an eerie precision, an omnipresence that made it feel like they were always watching. No one had ever been able to trace their leader, and even the cops were powerless to stop the terror. One evening, a small-time shopkeeper named Victor received the dreaded demand. It was left on his counter, a small piece of paper with just one line. "Pay or you'll lose them." It included a bank account number and a time to drop off the cash. His heart pounded as he read it over and over, but he decided he wasn't going to be bullied like the others. He had saved enough over the years to move his family out of the city, and he wasn't going to throw it all away for some faceless gang. Victor called the police, believing that they could protect him. A special task force known as Unit 17 had been formed to deal with this gang. Led by Detective Ray, the team had been hunting the gang for years, but they were always one step behind. Each time they tried to intercept the gang, something went horribly wrong. When Detective Ray got the call, he told Victor to hold off on paying. They'd stake out the drop-off and catch the collector, hoping it would lead them to the gang's leader, known only as the Phantom. The collector showed up right on time, a shadowy figure who took the money and walked off into the night. The task force followed the man, but something was off. When Detective Ray finally cornered him in an alley, he found the man dead. His throat was slit, and on his body was a note: "You can't stop us." Victor, thinking the threat was over, went home to his family that night. The next morning there was a knock on his door. He hesitated before opening it, but when he did, he found a small brown parcel sitting on his porch. His stomach twisted into knots as he ripped it open, only to stumble back in horror. Inside was the severed head of his younger brother. He dropped to his knees, screaming in terror, knowing that his decision to fight back had cost him his brother's life. The cops were called again, but no one could explain how the gang knew or how they moved so quickly. The same night, Detective Ray came home, exhausted, trying to figure out how the gang always stayed one step ahead. But as he walked through his front door, a horrible sight greeted him. His wife and child, both murdered, their lifeless bodies arranged as if to send a sick message. On his dining table was a note, written in blood: "You should have known better." The gang was more than a group of criminals. They had a network so tight, so secretive, that it was as if they were always watching, always knowing. Each time a cop got close to catching someone, that officer's family would die. No one was safe, and fear paralyzed the entire city. The police were powerless to stop the cycle of death. Every attempt to catch a collector, every plan to infiltrate the gang resulted in more bloodshed. The cops who tried to fight back would find their loved ones dead within hours, their bodies always accompanied by the same note: "We are everywhere." The gang was no ordinary group of criminals. It was an intricate network of desperate, blackmailed individuals forced to carry out the Phantom's bidding. Each new victim became part of the web, with the promise of death looming over their families if they refused. No one could escape. No one could break the chain. The Phantom's power came from the terror he created, and as long as fear gripped the city, he remained untouchable. The cycle of death, parcels, and terror continued, leaving the city trapped in the grasp of a faceless monster that no one could stop. And in the shadows, the phantom laughed, knowing that no matter how hard they tried, they could never find him, because he was everywhere.